Welcome to the Gay Buddhist Forum, where teachers from all schools of Buddhism offer their perspectives on the Dharma and its application in modern times, especially for LGBTQI audiences. These talks are offered freely to the world and made possible by appreciative listeners. If you would like to support our efforts to share the Dharma with underserved audiences, please visit gaybuddhist.org. There you can donate, find a list of upcoming speakers, or enjoy many hundreds of these recorded talks dating back to 1996.
Welcome back. We'll go around and introduce ourselves. Let's start with people online. We have Daniel, Bruce, Christian, Michael, Patricia, Richard, Harley, John, Tom, Jim, Frisco, and Gaitis. And my name is Cass.
Alex. Luis. Clark.
My name is Henry.
Karen.
Jeffrey.
Bob.
Jeff. Jim. Jerry. Stephen.
Carol. Carrie.
Matthew.
Steve. Bob.
Tyler. Jim. Jack.
Richard.
Kevin.
Ron. Michael.
So thank you for being here and for persisting if you were caught in traffic. Our speaker today is Dorothy Hunt. Dorothy serves as spiritual director of Moon Mountain Sangha and was the founder of the San Francisco Center for Meditation and Psychotherapy. She is the author of Only This, Leaves from Moon Mountain, and Ending the Search, From Spiritual Ambition to the Heart of Awareness, as well as articles published on non-dual wisdom and psychotherapy. She teaches at the request and in the spiritual lineage of Adyashanti, and who invited her to share the Dharma in 2004. Dorothy has a long and deep connection to the teachings of Ramana Maharshi and the non-dual teachings of Zen, Advaita, and the Christian mystics. She invites a deep welcoming of the human expressions of the mystery. A licensed psychotherapist since 1967, Dorothy is now retired from her private practice. She is a mother and a grandmother. For more information, please visit dorothyhunt.org or Dorothy Hunt Moon Mountain Sangha on YouTube.
Thank you so much. Thank you. It's a real pleasure to be back with you. I've always enjoyed my time here, so thanks so much for the invitation. So before I speak about what I'd like to talk to you about today, which is the sacred tapestry of your life, of life in general, I have a confession to make, a request, and a question. Maybe not in that order. But the confession is this. I feel moved to tell you this because it was a big thing for me. So I'm 80. That's not the confession piece. I don't mind that. You know that. But today was the first time that I used Google Maps on my phone while driving my car. Yes, thank you. I deserve a little applause. My kids who are in their 50s, okay, Mom, why aren't you? Yeah, anyway, today I really needed it as I was doing U-turn after U-turn in the middle of traffic because of the street closures for the marathon. So that's my confession. But thank you for clapping. That meant a lot to me. Okay, my question is this. Does anyone know the final score of the USA basketball game this morning? No. Oh my gosh. Okay. Well, I have to wait till I get home. I got in the shower, and when I got out of the shower, Serbia was up 10-2. I really like basketball, in case you don't know. Anyway.
She loves Steph Curry.
Yeah, that is my boyfriend for sure, and along with a million other people. But so then I go have my breakfast. I come back, and they're up by 7, I think, at the halftime. And Kevin Durant has made all of his 8 shots and 21 points in the first half. That's as far as I can tell you. None of you are that interested, or you would have known the score. So, oh well, we'll wait for that. Okay, so my request before we get into more deep subjects than basketball or Google Maps, if you could just take a moment and let your attention just drop into your heart. It doesn't have to be a big, long thing. And just let yourself send love to each other here in this room and on the screen. Just a little energy of love, acceptance, openness. It's right here. We don't have to go far. And then feel free to send it anywhere else you want, to anyone else that comes to mind. But it only takes a moment. Because love moves right out of the emptiness, right out of your heart. You don't have to stop sending love, but I will begin talking about the sacred tapestry of your life. Yesterday I wrote the August message for the Moon Mountain Sangha newsletter. It comes out once a month online. And the topic was the same topic that I want to speak to you about. So if you get that newsletter, a little bit of this will be repeated, but not much. When I thought about this as a topic, I really imagined that, metaphorically speaking, of course, that life was just this enormous tapestry, this unending tapestry that was composed of these vertical strands, which, if you know anything about weaving, that's called the warp. Vertical strands. The vertical strands are the strands of awareness. Each of us are vehicles for. Each of us have that which is moving through us in all kinds of ways. So those on a loom, those vertical strands don't move. I mean, they're flexible and they touch whatever is coming through them, but they're unchanging. And our true nature is that. It's unchanging, even in the midst of everything that changes. And the weft, those are the horizontal threads or yarn or whatever that are woven. And those are changing constantly in your life and mine, in the world, actually. I think about a week ago, President Biden announced he would not be seeking a second term, did he not? And this week has been an amazing shift and change. I'd like to talk about politics, but I'm not here to do that, so we won't go there any further. But the colors, the shapes, the textures, the ever-changing moment to moment to moment to moment experience that we have, those are the relative threads of our life, of our lives. And so this incredible tapestry is kind of a way of thinking. I mean, you all know the metaphor of the ocean and the waves and the sky and the clouds and all that, but I'm using the loom today. But there's no edges, there's no edges. So what happens, it seems to me, is that we all have been conditioned to imagine that this thread, we can pull out one thread that's filled with awareness and whatever's happening moment to moment, and imagine that's a separate somebody. That there's a separate me that could possibly be separate from the wholeness of being, from life itself. And we've all been conditioned in that way, but it's worth looking into. It's worth exploring. Who or what are you really? Are you just this one thread? But can you even pull it apart from all the rest, all the things that are happening, all the threads of the weft that's going constantly, moment to moment to moment? Well, when I was thinking about this topic, I had to go back and reread some of Kabir's poetry. Kabir was a 15th century poet. That was not his main the main thing he was doing in his life. He was a weaver. And so weaving came into his poetry as he just spontaneously would write or speak in poetic terms. And we don't know a whole lot about his childhood, but most people agree that he grew up Muslim, maybe because he was adopted into a Muslim family, not clear about that. But as an adult, he began to be a disciple of, a devotee of, and I've waited a long time to say this name, Swami Ramananda. I practice Swami Ramananda. Anyway, I love that name. At any rate, he was a Hindu. Swami Ramananda was a Hindu. So when Kabir died, there was an argument between Sufis and on the one side and Hindus on the other in terms of what to do with the body. Because the Sufis said the corpse must be buried, and the Hindus said no, it must be cremated. So they had this argument, as the legend goes, and legends are legends, but I like this legend. And the story is that when they removed the shroud from what they thought was the corpse, there were just a pile of flowers there. And so half of the flowers were buried and half of the flowers were cremated, as the story goes. But Kabir was often critical of the rigidity, I would say, or sometimes the ridiculousness of certain spiritual practices or spiritual thoughts. And so I wanted to read a few of his poems about that because I think we could relate. And maybe you're familiar with them, maybe you're not, but a couple, they're short. The spiritual athlete often changes the color of his clothes, and his mind remains gray and loveless. He sits inside his shrine room all day so that the guest, God, had to go outdoors and praise the rocks. Or he drills holes in his ears. His beard grows enormous and matted. People mistake him for a goat. He goes out into wilderness areas, strangles his impulses, and makes himself neither male or female. He shaves his skull, puts his robe in an orange vat, reads the Bhagavad Gita, and becomes a terrific talker. You know some people like that. Kabir says, actually, you're going in a hearse to the country of death, bound hand and foot. And then this is one that I think we could probably relate to, those of us who have been through, all the ideas and fantasies about what should happen if you're a spiritual seeker, how you should look, what you should think, how you should feel, all of that. Anyway, this poem goes, friend, please tell me what I can do about this world I hold to and keep spinning out. I gave up sewn clothes and wear a robe, but I noticed one day the cloth was well woven. So I bought some burlap, but I still throw it elegantly over my left shoulder. I gave up rage, and now I notice that I am greedy all day. I worked hard at dissolving the greed, and now I am proud of myself. We can relate even today, hundreds of years later, right? When the mind wants to break its link with the world, it still holds on to one thing. Kabir says, listen, my friend, there are very few that find the path. I'm not in agreement with that last line. I think there are many who find the path because the path is life. It's this moment. It's your life. It's my life. And we're all awake. We don't necessarily know how deep that awakeness goes or how it is linked to everything else in the world, but we are on the path regardless. And some of us are moved to study in one tradition, some in another tradition, and so forth. But if you look at all the traditions in terms of the kernel of what they're pointing to, it's same. It's the same. It's the same. I'll read one other kind of funny poem around this idea of what we should do to become what we already are. That's the point. To be what we already are. if we just look deeply inside. So this one says, if saying Ram gave liberation, saying candy made your mouth sweet, saying fire burned your feet, saying water quenched your thirst, saying food banished hunger, the whole world would be free. The parrot gabbles God like a man, but doesn't know God's glory. When he flies off to the jungle, he'll forget God. If you don't see, if you don't touch, what's the use of the name? See, that's really about embodying whatever we've realized, wherever we are on the so-called path. If saying money made you rich, nobody would be poor. We would all have a different life. If saying money made you rich, nobody would be poor. Lovers of lust and delusion laugh at the lovers of God. Kabir says, worship the one Ram, or you'll go trussed up to Death City. So he likes to kind of put that at the end, as if we don't know that the body will eventually wear out. But who or what is that body made of? What is the truth? What's the reality of who you are and what this world is made of? What is the fabric of reality, we could ask. And of course, people have very different ideas. I was reading a review of a book by a physicist, David Deutsch was his name, whose main study was in quantum mechanics. I'm not a physicist student and I can't really speak, but he was speaking about the fabric of life really in the quantum sense of wave and particle and uncertainty principle and how time is not linear and all of those things. And I could relate whatever I understood, which wasn't deep because of not being a scientist in that respect, but that, we don't know how the next moment's going to be. There's an infinite possibility here, and yet life keeps moving. The weft of life, moment to moment, keeps weaving itself based on causes and conditions that, from my perspective, go back to beginning with time. So Kabir, a little bit more about him. He was very generous. And as I say, he was a weaver. He was an ordinary person in the sense that he wasn't a spiritual teacher by trade or anything. But he sold his weavings to make money to support his family. And the stories go that if he might see somebody on his way to the market who looked threadbare, excuse me, or somebody who looked like they didn't have clothing to wear, he would just give the fabric that he was going to sell to that person. And he would come back home and his friends or his family would say, why on earth did you do that? And in I think it's in one of his poems, but something I read about him is a line I love. He said, if your boat is full of water or your house is full of wealth, it is very wise to use both hands to empty them. If your boat is full of water or your house is full of wealth, it's wise to use both hands to empty them. So, he had this view that whatever was the creation, and he believed, he was a very devoted bhakti kind of guy, but for him God was formless, as we might say true Buddha nature is formless, and so forth and so on. But he would use the language of his trade to describe. So he said, that the human body was made of very fine and delicate threads, and it took 9 months to complete the tapestry of the human body. And then he had another line that I really loved where he said, and the human body, at one point is pounded on the stone of awareness. Do you know in the old days, to clean clothing, you'd be pounding on stone. So pounded on the stone of awareness. That's all of us. We've been pounded on the stone of awareness. And Kabir believed, we were born without impurities. we know that we're not born unconditioned. There's lots of conditioning that all of us have genetically, and generations past, however that moves in terms of what we find our interests are, our talents are, and so forth. But this awareness, and I use that word not to try to figure out what it means with thought, but we all have it, don't we? We're born with it. We've never not had that. And we think it belongs to a separate me, but it's like pulling that thread out of the tapestry of life and imagining that your awareness somehow is something you own, that it belongs to you. Is it true? Is it true? Or is it what we share, not what we own? So when you look deeply into who or what you are, you may find something revealed that makes all of the searching seem a little bit funny. You might laugh like, "Oh my God, it's been here all along. It's so simple. Something so simple." And yet it's here for every single experience we have. And if you think about the loom vision, not a single thread of the weft doesn't touch the warp. Not a single thread of our life isn't completely and utterly touched by, infused by, even created by an expression of this that's aware and awake in all of us. Not just a few people. All of us. All of us. But we often don't know how profound that is, to appreciate. And then we're constantly looking for our happiness, for our freedom, for whatever, when something else happens. But we can only be awake in the present moment. Yesterday is past. Tomorrow's a projection. So right here and now, something's awake. Something's aware in everyone. And it's true if we're human beings or fish beings or bird beings or even the supposedly non-animal life. We also know that plants and trees and all things are interconnected and they communicate with each other. Do they have a brain? No. Is awareness only coming from a brain? I don't think so. But you can look for yourself and see. Do you know? Because whatever it is that you see, touch, taste, hear, whatever, you would not know it if you weren't aware. So if you look at a billion stars in the night sky, you think they're out there, but they're happening in your awareness. Billions of galaxies happening in your awareness. The awareness that we share. The awakeness that we share. And so we're looking for another experience, but if you have a direct experience of anything, that is an experience that isn't loaded with concepts, with additions. And that direct experience of anything will give you a much bigger, deeper, broader, and more profound experience than you could imagine. Just even looking at a single thing, like your finger or a plant or a flower. Words will come. Words are lovely. We're not against using words. I'm using them now. But the fact of the matter is that there's something that's beyond words. There's a wordless dimension of us. There's a dimension of ourselves that is empty. And not empty in a psychological sense. We all have had feelings of emptiness, maybe loneliness, so forth and so on. That's not the kind of emptiness that Buddha talked about or that I'm speaking about right now. For me, that emptiness is what's empty of definition. We can't say what it is. I'm using the word awareness. That's not it. Like the Tao says, the Tao that can be told is not the eternal Tao. The name that can be named is not the eternal name. However, there is this dimension of ourselves that is wordless. And when you touch into it, maybe in meditation, maybe sitting in the park looking at nature, maybe in a relationship moment, that there's something that arises that's not about a separate me. It's just the moment as it is. You can feel like you're in the flow of things where a separate self idea is not what's going on. Maybe, I don't know, maybe a few of those marathoners today got into that flow. If you're an athlete, if you run, whatever, or play a sport or whatever, you can have, or draw or write or any kind of creative endeavor where you're not thinking about it all the time. There's this moment of something just happening, life just happening, this weft just weaving itself, this creative, energy just coming forth, just coming forth. So, from one perspective, life is a seamless whole, seamless. And then, thought divides it up. Not a problem if you see through it. So we're talking about making that transparent. Like he was saying, if water quenched your thirst, or saying food, ended your hunger, then, and then. The words aren't going to do it. And that's true in the spiritual sense as well. The words are not going to give you an experience that changes your life. But there is an experience that can change your life, And it doesn't have to be 30 years on the cushion. It can be a single moment. A single moment. Any moment. Any moment. Where you see through the me idea, the self idea. You see it as an idea. You're not discounting the body. It's a precious gift we've been given. And we're not saying, and you should always feel so grateful that that you're sick or dying or just got injured. Or it isn't about a should at all. It's seeing that those experiences are every bit they belong every bit the same way pleasant ones do. Life is lived in duality. Our mind is lived in duality. Loneliness and belonging, up, down, health, illness, day, night, good, bad, all of those ways that our mind categorizes and judges life. What knows that that's happening? You see, something's aware, even when you're in your judging mind, even when you have the thought that, now I'm proud of myself because I threw my whatever the poem. But it's kind of like everything belongs. If you really look at the wholeness of being, there's nothing that's excluded. One of my friends who's deceased now, but she used to ask, she said, in the infinite you are, where would you send something that you wanted to be rid of? Where would you send it? In the wholeness of being. We're trying to get rid of a lot of things, aren't we? What if we brought them close? What if we let those things be touched by this that's awake and aware? And that is not just, it also moves as the quality of love and compassion and intimacy and so forth. And one question that you may ask, and people ask, well, if in fact we're not just this separate self, if in fact we're an expression of the wholeness of being, why does life feel so personal? We all have an experience of life feeling personal, don't we? And the way I look at it is that we have mistaken intimacy for somehow being a condition of a person, instead of realizing this that's awake and aware is always intimate with the moment. That's why it feels so personal. Do you know? It's never not at one with, So this that we are is at one. Our Buddha nature, the one without a second, the mystery, whatever word you want to use, it's never separate from the moment as it is. It can't be. It's at one with it, ever present. Your own presence, ever present. It's present to when you feel good. It's present to when you feel not so good. It's present to your enemy, quote unquote. It's present to your friend. And that presence, that awake presence that we are, that's the gateway to freedom. But we can't just talk about it. We're not just talking about it. It's like look into it for yourself. Find out for yourself. Don't take anyone's word for it, not mine, not anyone else's. I have a few more poems I want to share with you from Kabir around what I would say is what's underneath this loom, the loom of warp and weft, what's underneath this that is appearing and disappearing in whatever we want to call this life, dream, illusion, the movie of our lives, the stories that keep weaving themselves, the ones we hold on to that create joy sometimes, but also the stories we hold on to that keep creating suffering upon suffering upon suffering. What if every moment is just what it is? Just what it is. We don't have to hold on to it. And we don't have to project it. Of course, the mind does that. Conditioned mind will do that. And so we get to see that as well. If I've had a very traumatic experience here, I will probably have fear that's projected into the future, or fear that colors here. Can we look into the matter? Not so I can fix a self, but so I can really bring love, compassion, understanding, and clarity to the moment as it is. But when I think about what is underneath all of it, I want to just invite us to that exploration. And a couple more poems, and then maybe we can just sit in it for a bit. So here's a Kabir poem. He says, "I've got your back. You won't find me in shrines or in stupas, not in masses, not with legs curled around my neck, not in some fancy restaurant. If you are really looking for me, I'm not hard to find. You will find me in some tiny house of time." Kabir says, "Oh, student, tell me, what is God?" God is the breath of wind inside the wind. We could use the word Buddha nature. It's the breath of wind inside the wind. It's the listening inside the listening. It's the seeing inside the seeing. There's something there. It's awake. It's not separate. What is that? What is that? So maybe we could just close our eyes as I read a couple more things to you, and then I want to open it up for questions or sharing or whatever. But this is an invitation through these poems and through whatever words might come forth here to that dimension of yourself that you can't really speak about, but you can feel, you can sense. It's like letting your attention drop through the layers of mind, through the layers of thought and belief, and just be open to the possibility that this too could be revealed to you. This poem by Kabir is called "Where My Beloved Lives." There is no happiness or unhappiness. We could say here, in this place we're pointing to. There is no happiness or unhappiness. There's no truth and no lies. There is no sin and no virtue. There is no day or night, no sun or moon. There's only radiance and the absence of light. There is no meditation or knowledge. There are no mantras or innocuous prayers. There's no speech coming from the Vedas or foreign books. All this is lost in this place. no inside, no outside, no home or homeless. The very small and the very large do not exist. Neither the elements of the periodic table nor the Holy Trinity are there. Even silence is not there. No roots, no flowers, no branches, no seeds, but even without a tree, the fruits abound. There's only the breath of wind that sounds like Om. Here, the lists of life are nowhere to be found. There's absolutely nothing where the beloved exists. Kabir says, I know what I know, and whoever reads my poems will become free. And then I'll share with you a poem by a Japanese Zen monk. Very similar. It goes like this. It's called On Zen. There is a reality even prior to heaven and earth. Indeed, it has no form, much less a name. Eyes fail to see it. It has no voice for ears to detect. To call it mind or Buddha violates its nature, for it then becomes like a visionary flower in the air. It is not mind nor Buddha. Absolutely quiet, and yet illuminating in a mysterious way. It allows itself to be perceived only by the clear-eyed. It is Dharma, truly beyond form and sound. It is Tao, having nothing to do with words. Wishing to entice the blind, the Buddha has playfully let words escape his golden mouth. Heaven and earth are ever filled with entangling briars, my good, worthy friends gathered here. If you desire to listen to the thunderous voice of the Dharma, exhaust your words, empty your thoughts, for then you may come to recognize this one essence. So I just invite us to sit for a few minutes more. Can you exhaust the words for the moment? Can you let your attention move beyond the thoughts, the beliefs, the ideas that you have about the Dharma or about who you are? Just for a moment. They'll all be here later. But what is here if we don't go to the I thought? The thought that we think describes who you are. What if we don't add anything to this moment? Who or what are you now if you don't add anything? You still exist, don't you? Something is still here, even without our attachment to a self-description. What's here before the thought, I am this or that? If we take away the this or that, we're left with I am. Now let those words go too. So at least for some of you, are you not sitting as simply being itself? Not even knowing what word to use, but just knowing that you're here. What is most deeply true is here for what's here, regardless of what that is, regardless of where the body moves. Something is here. You are here as what you most deeply are. And it may ever remain mysterious to the mind of thought. And yet, here it is. Here it is. Here you are. So, well, I'd like to just let us be in that silence for however long. I do want to allow time for sharing or questions or whatever. And I will just say this. A lot of spiritual seekers are trying to transcend and then stay in some state of transcendence. Have you tried that? How successful have you been? How is it that you even think that it would be required or possible or necessary to just live half of the tapestry? Just being one half of the tapestry. Doesn't the Heart Sutra tell us emptiness is form? Form is emptiness. Form is exactly emptiness. Emptiness exactly form. Why try to get rid of either dimension of yourself? Because it's a single dimension. You can't. You can't. The only thing that can divide it is a thought. Okay, I want to hear from you guys now. What comes up for you, or what would you like to argue with, or share, or whatever? Yes.
I was trying to think of what I was hearing and learning from what you said, and the thought, I don't even want to call it a thought, but the last words in my head were, don't think, don't analyze, it's simply that way.
Exactly. It's so much simpler, isn't it? And yet here we are. This body, that body. There's something here that doesn't require thinking or analysis. And some of our minds are it's very fun to think and to analyze. So if that's how it moves, we're not saying, oh, that shouldn't happen. But there's something deeper than all of that. So I'm really happy that you know that. Yeah. Right behind you, you had your hand up?
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you.
Oh.
That's it.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, just...
Thank you. I'm glad you're here. Yeah. What else wants to come forth? Yeah.
Hard to formulate when it's not related to the thought. I see that I often was driven by idea of what I want to achieve, whether professionally, spiritually, set the goal, use the technique, make an effort in order to achieve. And
yeah, we all know that one.
It does achieve something external, and that's part of it. Those horizontal lines in a tapestry, not to be discarded. Yet if I let it all go, there still seems like the creativity comes from the emptiness. Like love comes from the emptiness, and creativity, there is some joy in manifesting, creating something.
Sure.
And it's not driven by the concept I have to be good, I have to achieve this, but it sort of spontaneously arises in the moment. And I was thinking, well, again, that's a mind thinking. Now, how do I shift from achieving mental goals to manifesting creativity from the empty space, which is not mind's job? And that's why it's kind of a strange question. But
well, no, it isn't.
So you just relax and wait for something to pop up. happen yet.
It's not a strange question because something in you right this moment is seeing through it.
Yeah.
It's becoming transparent, which doesn't mean it doesn't create joy when that creative movement happens, or that as one of the. I brought this silly thing just to show you how the ocean might be woven. I didn't use it yet, but here we go. But also creativity. Creativity. What are the things that you're moved by consciousness itself to bring forth in your life, in the world?
And maybe it was always that case. Maybe what I said was mindset in goals and achieving was manifestation of that creativity in the form of my thoughts and external goals, exactly. But so it's not that much different.
Exactly.
Maybe I should just continue to.
Bingo. Yes, are we really the separate weavers of our life? That is a question that one could pose, you see, and what you're looking at the possibility of is, wow, maybe it's just being woven.
It's a co-creation.
That's a lovely...
At the same time being woven and you participate in the movement.
Of course. But the co-creating idea, and I was speaking to a friend of mine just recently about it, she was saying, I feel like I'm a co-creator with, the mystery, and like I'm sitting in the passenger seat and that's the driver. And I said, I understand that, that's a felt sense, and yet that's two. What if they're not two? Mm-hmm. What if that which is co-creating is actually an expression of that which is creating at all times in all moments? What if that is a possibility? But, let truth arise however it does for each of us. We all we're here with different dharma. We're here with different things that life wants to present, wants to unfold in its own life. And so we're not trying to change that so much as to embrace the truth of it and not trying to be somebody we're not. So, yeah.
Mystery.
That's one of my favorite words to use. Because once you're touched by the underground, by the ground of our being, once that reveals itself, it's not revealing itself in words. It's not revealing itself. It's not coming up through the strands. See, these are dark mystery. It's not coming through, through the mind of thought, and so. The story of Bodhidharma and Emperor Wu. I think it was Emperor Wu, right? Okay, so Bodhidharma comes and he's sitting and everyone knows about him, and the emperor comes in and he asks him questions. Well, how much merit am I going to get from putting money in these temples for Buddhism? He said none. And he has these various questions, and finally, the Emperor Wu says to Bodhidharma, well, then who am I speaking to? Who stands before me? And he answers, I don't know. I don't even think he said I. He just said, don't know. And see, when this reveals itself, it's not really just down, it's everywhere, but when it reveals itself, it doesn't reveal itself in words. And so eventually, even if you've done self-inquiry as a spiritual practice, who am I? It's not like sitting on the couch, who am I? It's really a desire, a deep desire to know. Who's thinking, who's feeling, who's unhappy, who's happy, who's looking at himself in the mirror, whatever. But once that reveals itself, because something has been revealed, that you'll never be able to say what it is. Only that it is. And that's the mystery. That's the mystery. Yeah.
Thank you for another wonderful talk, Dorothy. I love Kabir, and you read all my favorites, especially the one about throwing the bird out.
Yes.
Me over my shoulder.
Yeah.
The more I practice or just get older over time, I appreciate it's really about wholeness, isn't it? And I have an adopted teacher that uses the expression when there's a fear or something unattractive or nagging us. She'll say, "It's okay. You can be with me here." And just bring it to the self.
Exactly.
Bring it home.
Exactly.
And embrace it.
Exactly.
And, that's so radical from, I used to, I practiced a lot of transcendence over the years.
Well, we start out that way.
Yeah, right. And it is right, it's the most overlooked part of our experience, I think.
Yeah, well, true non-duality isn't about an opposing duality. Non-duality is not two. It's this, right?
Yes.
And so, and maybe it helps to get older.
Mm-hmm.
We know what the benefits are, and also the detractions sometimes, probably.
Yeah.
But there's a sense of, it's not about trying to be somewhere else anymore.
Mm-hmm.
It's about realizing that whatever's here, is here as an expression of the wholeness that you are.
Mm-hmm.
It's an expression of the life that you are, that's living itself. And it doesn't, it seems to, from my perspective, it lives and moves in service to itself and in service to a very impersonal karma. There is karma, cause and effect, but it's not personal from my perspective. It's part of how things get woven. And to come into a friendlier, more compassionate relationship to all the parts of ourselves that we wanted to be rid of or thought shouldn't have been here, whether it's shame or grief or anger or sometimes it's love. Some people are very, it's scary to really feel love. My teacher Adyashanti said at one point, there's something that people fear more than death, and that's love. Because you can stay separate till the moment you die, you kick the bucket. But in love, you can't stay separate. So to bring something really home into the heart, what that moment of experience of rage or of terror or whatever, and it's not easy, and sometimes we need help, and we need to have somebody to help us witness those moments, because they're too hard otherwise. They feel overwhelming. But just to realize that there's home ground. Your heart, not this little heart, but the one we share, that embraces and holds all of it. And it's welcome. Everything's welcome there. Nothing is excluded. So it's great to come to that place, regardless of how old we get. But if you're younger than some of us here, or at least consider bringing that perspective to your life at whatever age you are. Somebody else had their hand up. I think we're still good. Maybe go ahead.
So I had at least an ambivalent reaction to what you're saying about the role of thought and wordlessly. So part of my reaction is, that makes sense. That fits with my experience that I learned a noting practice. And in the Burmese style, we were always noting everything.
Absolutely.
And then at a certain point, I went on a retreat at Spirit Rock where I forget who the teacher was supposed to be, Chenli Rinpoche. And anyway, so one of the teachers I'd worked a lot with, who'd worked with Tibetan and Burmese teachers, said, well, at a certain point you let go of the noting. It's like, oh, okay, well, let me see what that's like. It took many years for me to feel comfortable with that.
Yeah.
And then it was like, oh, I see, that is actually possible to be aware without noting. So that resonates with me. And I think there are certain hierarchies built into the practices of retreats or teaching, and that feel false to me. I think the Buddha taught originally that there are like many ways of awakening, depending on people's particular karmas, right? So I think there's a valorization of two things often in spiritual practice. My experience is that one of them is that introversion is better than extroversion. The other is that non-thought is better than thought. And I heard that in what you were saying, at least the second part, that non-thought is better
It's
than
not
thought.
better. I never used that word.
You didn't use that word, but it was...
Is what's here when thought isn't present is the very awareness that you're just talking about. The one that doesn't require noting, that's already aware.
That's one path, right? It's not. So
Well, there's not one right.
Right. So
no
I think that, maybe I was mishearing it, but I think the impression that I got was that being free from thought, that sort of wordlessness, is better than words. Whereas I think it's possible, and I think it's more consistent with the original, the most clear, for what it's worth, the Buddha's actual teachings, where that there are many Dharma gates.
Well, absolutely.
Thought would be
absolutely
just as good a Dharma gate as non-thought.
I want to be clear with you that I'm not judging thought as bad. I'm not judging no thought as better. I'm saying see thought for what it is. You know, when you were in your noting practice, that was thought, wasn't it? There was, feeling, thought, da. You were putting a word to what was already being shown to you through your own awareness. And so many people will mistake, from my perspective, that practice is about the mind of thought doing it, when in fact what you learned, as you were sharing with us, was that was really already happening without the words. Awareness was already here. The noting practice could be dropped. It didn't need to be. That could be really helpful, And there are many, many paths. I mean, here Kabir, Muslim and Hindu, and we're talking about that in a Buddhist fellowship group. So, and Christianity the same. Meister Eckhart, said, please God, free me from the concept of God. It's all traditions and no tradition. And I totally agree with what you said about there being ways of practice that aren't necessarily right for everyone. Do you know? Sometimes running is a practice. Sometimes painting is your practice. Sometimes dancing is your practice. I had a dancer come into my office some years back who was floating through the air in some, whatever. And she realized there was nobody doing it. It scared her to death, But she happened onto one of my books, and she came. It's like, so we don't know. We don't know. And that's why be open to your path. Be open to what is obvious for you. That would be much more important as a teacher talking to anybody than to say, this is the right way and this is the wrong way. I don't believe that. But I do think that when we are not as identified with the thought called me, we still will find there's something here. What is that? And then we get to experience whatever wants to be revealed in those moments.
Well, thank you so much.
Yeah, well, thank you. I'm glad to have an opportunity to clarify that. I think we're out of time. Yeah.
Yes, thank you so much.
Thank you.
We have announcements. Do we have a host?
Yes. Oh, Enda. Not somebody behind you raise their hand. Hi, I'm your host today. Please stay and enjoy the company of the Sangha. There are refreshments and hot water for tea. When you finish with your cup, you can put it in the sink. And I'll be going around with a Dana bowl to accept contributions to cover our expenses. Your generosity is appreciated. Donations in the range of $10 to $20 help the Sangha meet its expenses. These include honorarium for our Dharma speakers, rent this beautiful center, and our quarterly newsletter, mostly sent to people in prison. There's a newcomer sign-up sheet on the credenza. If you wish to be included and receive our Sangha membership directly, please sign up and include contact information you wish to share with the group. And finally, some members go out to lunch after the meeting. Everyone is welcome to join them. The group meets at the front door around 12:30.
Richard,
registration is open for our fall retreat at the Land of Medicine Buddha. It's September 20th to 22nd. Renee Rivera is our teacher. All genders are welcome, and all the information is on our website. We'd love to see more of you there.
And a reminder, Dorothy's website is dorothyhunt.org. And next week we have a small group discussion. And for those for whom basketball is a practice, the score in Paris was 110 for the United States and 84 for Serbia.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. You know, I'm probably the oldest person that ever took Steph Curry's online basketball course. And I didn't get very far with it because you had to be able to, get a basket 5 times from every position, and I never could do that. But thank you. I can enjoy watching the rerun without wondering.
Yes. On August 10th, Saturday, at 8 o'clock at Davies Symphony Hall, the San Francisco Choral Society will be giving a smashing presentation of Mendelssohn's deeply stirring and gorgeous storytelling about Elijah. It's absolutely magnificent. It was a huge hit all over Europe in the early 1800s. And it's very cinematic because it tells a story with episodes. And Mendelssohn was a genius with melody and harmony and orchestration. And there are just many heart-melting moments throughout the piece. It's quite, I highly recommend it. Thank you.
That's when?
It's the 10th, August 10th.
Okay, can we gather in a circle for the dedication? By the power and truth of this practice, may all beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May all be free from sorrow and the causes of sorrow. May all never be separated from the sacred happiness which is without sorrow. And may all live in equanimity without too much attachment or too much aversion, believing in the equality of all that lives.
Thank you so much. Thanks for the story.
Thank you for listening to the Gay Buddhist Forum. If you would like to hear several new talks per month and be notified of upcoming speakers so you can participate live, please subscribe to this podcast, like us on Facebook, and join our mailing list by visiting gaybuddhist.org.